Hey everybody, Bill in Virginia, and welcome to 2021. Hope everybody had a great New Year's and enjoyed the holidays. So while this video is not a continuation as such of the four-part series I had on putting that backdrop together, I have gotten a lot of requests to show the painting technique that I use for the back scenes on this. So I had already planned on building the next backdrop. In fact, that was already under construction while I was still working on this one. So this video is going to show snippets of the painting piece on this particular backdrop. So it'll be fun. Same basics. I'll continue on with this particular ridge, heading that direction. I'll get the base paint down, but I'll show how I make the trees, some of the colors that I use, and my technique, which is really straightforward. It's just having some fun in the mind's eye. So let's get started. Let's get that backdrop primed and ready. Although first I probably do need to glue the foam board together. I'll take care of that. So the priming will come tomorrow. Next segment. So for the basic colors on the backdrop, this is my palette. A forest green on the left, a off-white in the center, a Glidden product called Snowy Mount. It's got the batch number or color number there. Here's the sky blue that I'm using. Also, again, I just chose a Glidden paint called Everlasting for the color. I thought it matched pretty realistic sky blue. And then, of course, beverage to utilize while painting. Just a couple of cheap brushes to get the base coat on for the backdrop. So I'm just going to get that painted. There's no real special techniques there, but I will show a little bit as I'm going. All right, I've got the base coat for the sky in place, and I've got the forest green just on my little 1-inch piece done. You can see that the paint is still drying, hence the streaked look. I'm going to give this one a second coat since I had to cover up the Pink Panther, and I want to make sure I don't get any bleed through from that with this. You can see I've left that down there, not painted. That's going to be part of that cliff face, so I'm going to do a little bit of different work on that one. But in the morning, once everything is dried after the second coat of paint to the sky, I'll be able to start painting in the next pieces of the ridge that go across much of this backdrop. And then start doing some of the tree paint and get the background details done. So that'll spend some time, and I'll actually show the techniques that I use for that one. Well, it is time to start painting the backdrop with the back scenes on it. So here's what I'm going to use for paint. Essentially that quart can's got the white in it. I've got some of the acrylics, different shades of brown, some grays, some of the lighter green, a little mixing tray, and then the forest green that I use, and a couple of brushes. And that's it. That's all that I use to do the backdrops. The backdrop itself is all set. Everything is dry on it. Just as a note, this 1/4-inch shim, this is just for a gapper. That kind of helps push the back of the backdrop so that it is reasonably even with the end of the other backdrop, because these 4x8 sheets of extruded foam board are not necessarily 100% flat. So that particular seam, I'm not going to be able to do anything with. It's going to be what it is, and I'll deal with that as we go. So that's a seam I cannot hide. But let's get started. Let's start doing some painting. I've got a couple of witness marks laid out right here and here. So this is the top of the ridge tree line from the other backdrop. And then this one would be about the maximum height that I would want, at least right in here for the bluffs. So what I'm going to start to do, and you'll see, is I'm going to start painting in the bluffs. It's going to kind of run across, vary in height a little bit, drop down, drop almost to the bottom, and then kind of come back up over to the other side. So you'll see how it goes. All right, let's start painting. So I've got a mix of colors, and I'm not neat. You're going to notice I very seldom will clean the brush. I want the colors to blend. As you're painting in nature, it's not just one color. It's all colors. So I'm just going to plaster it on here. Just kind of, and you get a mix, different shades, different textures. All is good. So I'm just kind of, a lot of this is going to be covered up with the greens when I get to that point. So I'm not too worried about a whole lot on it yet. What I do want to do, though, is I do want to get a fairly sharp line at the top of where I want the ridge line to sort of end. That way I can know which directions I need to work on for trees and other things like that. And you blend it in, you mix it up. Doesn't have to be perfect coverage. In nature, there's nothing perfect. You're wanting to get some good colorations in, some good mix. And I'll go about halfway down here. And then I'm going to drop it. Pull it across. Even if some of that blue sticks through, that's not a big deal. Yeah, I got grays in areas here that add some of the subtle shades to it as well. Biggest thing is that you want to do a horizontal, if you're doing rocks that are horizontal. Get a little bit darker tones at the bottom, a little bit of lighter at the top. And you can run in lines just to add some variation. That's the fun of painting, is that you really don't make any mistakes. And if you see something that you do think you've made a mistake on, hey, you paint over it. It's so easy to make changes as you're painting and as you're doing different things. Again, blending it in, soft shades. In here. Okay. Let's see here. These are all in the distance, so don't need to highlight a whole lot. And most of this is going to be covered up. So next thing is my dark forest green, because I know that I'm going to have a tree line again similar to what I've had before on the other one. So I want to kind of come in down on the bottom, and I don't really care that I'm blending it with the browns and the whites and everything else. It's perfectly fine because it's going to be covered up anyway. So I just kind of get that worked in here. Get it up to the point where we're into the base. that in. We can kind of bring it up and into some of these. All right. This is where we start to use the other colors, the lighter colors. Now I'll load up the brush, not a lot, and I'll start just a little bit below the ridge line and just kind of start to tap it in. Blend it in a little bit. This gives it the lighter look. The trees that are farther away, they're sort of at the top, and again, just kind of press and press somewhat at an angle so that the brush presses it up, makes it look like you're looking at the top of trees. And here's my witness mark, so I want to keep the line fairly close. Now I'll also throw in an occasional dab of the darker green. Same thing, and I'm wanting to use some of the material from the browns, which will soften the look of the trees that are coming on. Again, some of that green, some little whites. Let it pull, let it go up. You can take in and actually use some of the light browns. This is where you kind of get some of the textures where it's different. So you can see already it's starting to kind of pull in a little bit of different colors. And again, you want to blend them in. Let the brush do the work, not you. And on the other side of the backdrop on this side, this was all pretty much solid green, the darker green. So I will put in a bit more of this over in here. I will have it where it'll kind of start to get some bigger trees in through here. So let's continue on with this. And when I start to get into the bigger trees, then I'm going to switch back over to the bigger brush. Load it up with a bit of the paint. And actually I'm going to put in a little bit of the white down here too. And this way I can start to make the fore cover. So you kind of blend in. And I want to make sure that I can have some room for the trees to kind of go. And you also want to be thinking scale on the trees that you're working on. Because you're working in an area where you've got N scale trees, so what you want is roughly N scale type silhouettes of trees in here. And keep coming across on the bottom. Brush shape, brush does the work. You just let it go and clean up messes that you might have, which occurs. Different shades. Like this area is too light green. I will darken that up. That's, again, easy enough to do. Switch back over to the finer brush for over here. And you notice I'm making a big mess with my paints. I don't care. You want the colors to go, maybe a little bit thicker here, a little bit thinner, as we kind of get across on top, as it starts to work down. You want the brush to be sort of on the dry side as you hit the tops of those. And you can kind of come back in. And you're adding trees in front of trees. You're getting some of that darker tones in. You can have a little bit of browns in and some of the whites and the yellows. You blend it in, but you don't want to blend it completely away. It gives you some of the highlights that you're looking for. You can have browns in there. This area will be covered with lots of brush, so not too worried again on this one. Again, bring up highlights. I'll use the bigger brush to kind of give me a little bit more texture in here. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of come back in, pull some of this, so I can start to make some of the top or the bases of the ridge, some of the other areas on here. Doesn't have to be a lot, just a little. Kind of, again, mix the colors in. Blend them in, paint them through, wipe them off if you need to wipe them off, and then just kind of come back in. Now we'll come back in for that and give me a little bit more texture for the near trees. And then come across on the bottom more. So again, using some whites. Just a mix of colors. So you can kind of see how that's looking here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to kind of let this dry on this side, and I'm going to continue to work down that way a little bit while the paint is wet, because then I'm going to come back in once this gets a little drier, and then I'm going to start to highlight more of the tree shapes in some of these areas, refine that brown a little bit better so I can get rid of some of the excess green that I put in and go from there. All right, paint is still wet, but here's a second backdrop. Kind of do a slow pan, so there's where it's going to match up to the other side. I get it a little bit of a different angle. You can kind of see how that's looking. Did complete it all the way down, so you can see, my bluff, and I might add a little bit more detail, some fine lines in that, just to kind of show it a little bit better. Kind of come across over this way, and just like on the other one, the bottom piece down here is going to have three-dimensional foliage coming off, so this is going to be kind of hidden. I might put in some houses and some other things back into here. We'll see how that goes. I'm probably going to put in a little bit of sculpt mold in along here, just so that it aligns better with that piece of it. Vegetation is going to be up here along the lines, sort of like what I've got up here. I think I'm going to get like a picture of a little farm and put the farm up here. a barn and maybe a house. And even though it's kind of hard to see, there's little cows on top of that bluff. So I'll make that a farm scene. But here we are. So this has been probably about 40 minutes worth of work, and I'm satisfied with it. I'm going to let it dry. I'll put it on the layout here, and let's take a look at it, see how it looks. But I think this gives you a good overview of the techniques that I use for quick and dirty painting. Seems to be effective. Looks pretty good to my eye. All right, I've got the second backdrop just kind of set in place here now. Looks blended pretty well. Again, I'm going to do some sculpt to mold, blend in that hilltop a little bit more than what it is. That'll come here after a while. But the tree line I like. I think the tree line's effective. So just coming across, again, see the backdrop along the main line there. You know, for the most part, I operate the train on the side I'm standing on. So having the backdrop in place is going to be pretty good. You know, you can see the seam. These are foam board, and like I made note, they're not perfectly flat. A little bit of variance, you know, probably add maybe a little shim just to kind of get it aligned up better. But the transition from scenery over to it is pretty good. So I'm happy with this. I think this looks pretty good. It all kind of blends in, comes up. So this is good. So hopefully those that are watching this, that were looking for some of my techniques on how I paint the trees for the backdrop, hopefully you got what you need and have fun with your own layouts. So a lot more to do on this, but I'm not going to make another backdrop video, at least for a while. All right, take care. Thanks, folks. Keep having fun with your layouts.